Yes, ma'am.
With all of the cutbacks on the police in Austin, how is that going to affect Williamson County?
Well, like I've gone on record saying that I'm 100% against defunding the police, period, end of story, no argument there. We do not need to defund. We actually need to fund more because as we see, we're getting that mentality moving up here. As people get priced out of their homes in Austin, they start gravitating. My daughter actually just bought a house in Gerald. And I was like, going, Gerald, why would you want to live that far north? She said, because the exact same home, builder, floor plan, everything identical, is $100,000 more in Georgetown.
Yep. Right.
So she goes, I went 15 minutes north and saved 100 grand. And I go, can't argue with that math, you know. So it's going to be a slippery slope. But one of the creative ideas that I keep pushing, and maybe it's not falling on deaf ears, but when you go into these new subdivisions, everybody wants to live in a master plan community, okay? And boy, do we have them coming by the thousands, or not, you know. But for the person who can't afford 30 acres, you know, on the San Gabriel, yeah, I mean, I want to be there too. But for the person who's getting pushed out of Austin and coming here, you know, we have a lot of these master plan communities, and there's 86 swimming pools and 3,000 miles of hike and bike trails and an amphitheater and 400 jungle gyms and 60 tennis courts and all that. And people are going, wow, I'll never have to leave. You know, they're enticing the people to come in. Well, the court is the one who gives those variances for how many plots they're allowed, their tax rates, you know, things of that. So why isn't the court going, okay, you get your 30 swimming pools and you get your 32 playgrounds and you get your 800 tennis courts, but you owe me 6 patrol cars, a substation, and an ambulance, and a firehouse. Those are amenities that attract people too. Because, you know, whenever you go to, I mean, I used to argue this to the court when we go in there begging for pay raises, and then go, well, why should we give you a pay raise? And I go, because nobody cares, and forgive me if you have relatives in this business, I'm just picking on them because I know Bob Day is a good friend of mine, but nobody cares about the road and bridge guy driving a tractor.
That's true.
They care about their firemen, they care about their paramedics, and they care about their cops. And their parks. For some reason, I did not know this until I got into government, that the commissioner's phone blows up 3 times to 1 for parks. Yeah, it really does. And that's where they put their emphasis. Yes, ma'am.
What would your plan be if you got a phone call and said, hey, we got a couple busloads of Antifa folks coming down to some small town like Taylor or something?
Absolutely. Great question. Great question. Been there, done that.
Okay.
Been there, done that. I would say I got your back, and as long as you're peacefully protesting, we're right here with you. We'll be your best friend. As soon as you pick up a rock, steal a pair of Nikes, shame on you. Shame on you. You're going to jail. You're a criminal. That is a fine line I don't differentiate between. I have been to protests at our courthouse before, tasked with going over there, and I'll tell you the story. It's humorous, but not for the poor individual that was being charged. But in the drug laws, they say there's a term called any derivative thereof. So say you're driving in your car and you got a little bottle of meth oil, but you got your 44-ounce big gulp. And the cops pull you over and you want to get rid of your evidence, so you dump it into your 44-ounce big gulp. Well, your 1 ounces just became 46 ounces.
Yeah.
Okay? And you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life. This would have gotten you, a stint in jail. This is going to put you away. And so there was a high
trafficker.
Yes. So there was this poor young man with McNeil High School, and he made pot brownies and was going to bring him to school. And he had this big old 8x11 baking sheet with a little weed in there that he was going to give to his friends or sell to them. But when he got caught, he had a 3-pound tray, full of chocolate fudge brownies, and he got charged with 3 pounds. So here's this 17-year-old. The media went nuts over it. The family went nuts, and rightly so. It's not what that law was intended. There's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, and that's definitely not what the spirit of the law was. And so they had huge protests. And protests are usually meant looking for a fight, so we're going to go back to the lawsuit issue. If you can get me to do something bad as the police officer, then I take a lot of heat off of your cause, and it all comes back on me, you know. And I'm not condoning anything, but you see a lot of that today with Black Lives Matter, you know. It's not that a black person died, it's the 80,000 bad white cops that did it. And that's not the case, but that's the narrative that they're rewriting. So anyway, I walked over to this protester, and it was his mom and his grandmother, and they were looking for a fight. And of course, they said stars, bars are your rank, and so they saw the sergeants. And I went over there and I had my stars on. I was assistant chief, and the sheriff said, go forth and do good. I'm not going over there, because he's the elected official, and that's he's got to stay neutral. So I go over there, and I go, my name's Mike Gleason, I'm assistant chief deputy. I'm here to help you. Excuse me. What can I do to make your protest really, really good? And you can see the wheels turning. You're the bad guy. We're here to pick a fight with you, and you're being nice to us. And I went, I go, I want to help you have a great protest. I respect your right to do it. It's constitutionally bound. I go, but you have to understand you're in front of a courthouse, and this sidewalk has to remain clear, because all these people that have business here, they have a constitutional right to access this courthouse, not just you. So we're going to defend their rights as well. So you keep the sidewalk, get on the grass. I know the sign says keep off the grass, but we'll ignore that right now. And she's like going, they had nothing. They had nothing. So I did all right, and they all packed up and left. Because they came looking for a fight, and I didn't fight them back. And that's what they wanted. And so to answer your question, I've been there and done that. And they come looking for a fight, don't give it to them. And don't argue with them. It's like arguing with a drunk. You're not going to win. It's not going to happen. So just try to amend them and help them and understand their cause and help them have a good event. And then they'll go looking for the fight somewhere else. Flip a coin.
Go ahead, Jeff.
A lot of people don't like statistics. I happen to, but what have been the statistics as far as crime and that sort of things?
Okay.
Since Sheriff chose.
Well, his platform right now is that he has reduced the response rate on priority 1 calls by 50%. Impossible. Impossible. And please film that and quote it and blow it up. And you can go to any major agency in the world and they will call you a liar if you tell them 50%. If you can shave 30 seconds off a response time, but you can't tell me if you got a 10-minute response time, he got it down to 5, it does not happen, and let me tell you why. There's a big computer that we all share in the county. It's called CAD, AVL, RMS. CAD is Computer Aided Dispatch, RMS is Record Management System, AVL is Automatic Vehicle Locator, and Mobile APHIS. Mobile APHIS is where we can take your fingerprints in the field, run it wirelessly through our computers, and hit the DPS database and identify you. So we did that entire suite one year. I was the team lead project manager on that. It was a 2.5-year project. We bought a tier 1 system. It was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I built that system. So you have to understand, Williamson County is one of 2 counties out of the 254 counties in the state of Texas that does not own its own communications. Okay? Williamson County Sheriff's Office does not have its own 911 dispatchers. We have a department called the Department of Emergency Communications, which is run by the county judge and his senior director. So all those dispatchers work for the senior director of communications, okay? However, we have authority over the radio that's granted to us by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Public Safety for our NCIC, our TCIC, which gives us the ability to run your driver's license, your criminal history, and that such. So having said that, when you call 911, it hits a call taker. Call taker says, where's your emergency, fire, police, what do you need? That clock is ticking. That clock started as soon as they picked up the phone. She determines who you need. She determines you need the sheriff's office. She routes it to the sheriff's department 911 operator. That clock's ticking. The 911 operator picks it up, finds out where your offense is, what's going on, and prioritizes it. Then they've got to find the AVL system, the automatic vehicle locator, will geo-proximity, is that a word? It'll find the closest officer to that priority call. And is he or she available? And is he or she equipped to handle the call? And then they have to send that call to your computer in your car. And then you have to acknowledge that you're in your car, because if not, it's beep, 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 or they do what's called a general broadcast over the radio. And then you have to push the button and go, I've got the call. and I read it, and I hit another button, I'm on my way to the call. I'll see all these ticklers, all are bouncing around, okay? And then you gotta say, I'm on my way to the call. And are you doing 30 miles an hour, or are you doing 300 miles an hour? And then you gotta arrive on the call, okay? Now, when the first phone call came in, that's the start, and when you arrive, that's the response time. What he's doing is he's going to hear when his cop got it on his computer, and that's what he's saying his response time is. He's manipulating the data. The dispatchers have told us this. We know it. We've proved it time and time again. So statistically, but what's the term, liars never figure, figures never lie, so it's kind of back and forth. So it's just how you want to read the data. You can manipulate data to say anything. So I'm a statistics guy too, but in this case, he's making up something, and I don't want to sound rude, but he's selling it to the uneducated public who doesn't know better.
I used to hear things about the dogs that with the sheriff's department, and I just want to know if there is still a group of dogs and trainers, and if you plan to use them and how.
Good question. I have, in my career, been the supervisor or commander over the canine program for about 10 years. So I'm very, very, very knowledgeable. We buy very, very, very expensive dogs. They're Title VI Schützen dogs that we buy on a DOD contract. In Hungary, Germany. We go overseas. We have a guy, he picks them for us. He owns the Hill Country Dog Kennel down in Bandera. I love the dogs because I used to kid all my canine handlers. I would tell them if I could teach the dog to drive, you'd be out of work. And so that's how smart these dogs are. And these dogs are very, very, very smart and very, very expensive, and a lot of money invested into them. And there is no bad dog, they're bad handlers. Because the dog will always challenge you. The dog is always fighting for dominance, and it's really funny because before I became very educated, this one dog, I asked his handler, because whenever the dog would heel, the officer would stand there with his boots like that, and the dog would take his paw and go. And I go, why is he doing that? He goes, it's dominance. It's dominance. That's why they do what they do. They're land sharks. I mean, these things are. When you or I walk into, say, a pizza parlor, you go, pizza. When a dog walks into a pizza parlor, he goes, garlic, oregano, tomatoes, onions, olives, bread, dough, sugar, the baking soda. Because their noses are 10,000 times. Think of that, 10,000 times more receptive than ours. And y'all smell some bad stuff, I'm sure. And now multiply that by 10,000. So, so a dog, dogs can't lie. They don't know how to lie. It's called ball drive. All they want to do is play. They're going after that reward. They just want to play. They know if I do good, I get that stupid Kong that bounces around. And that's their whole life, that's their whole life. And so, dogs, these dogs that we buy, the reason they go home is because they differentiate between work and they differentiate between play. When you get up in the morning and Dad starts putting, our mom starts putting on their gun belt, that dog's losing their mind. It's time to go to work, But when they come home, your kid can roll around on the floor with him and twist his ears, and they're part of the family. So that's just an amazing tool. Yes, we're going to keep them. I love them. Not the current people. There's a lot of them there. When I say there's not bad dogs, there's bad handlers. We have a lot of bad handlers, and they're ruining good dogs. And but yes, I have people that are experts in the field that'll be brought back to supervise. They don't necessarily have to have a dog, but they know their stuff. They can do the in-house certifications and stuff. They're the national, what's called NNDDA, National Narcotic Detector Dog Association, which is the lead unit in the United States, if not the world, for certifying dogs. And we have people on staff that are instructors.
Well, if you want to get rid of any of your dogs, put me first on the list.
No, it's kind of funny because I was laughing with Judge Gaddis about this one time. We sell them to the handler for $1. And then they take them home.
I'll give you 5.
Okay. And, well, I'll call you up. That was funny because the judge goes, you know what? He goes, we never got one of those dollars either, did we? I go, no, I can't ever remember. And the deputy's going, here's your $1. It was just a formality to sell government property to a citizen.
Number one, I am so happy to hear that they're Schützen dogs because I used to raise them.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I've been to the
They're the
tribe.
best of the best.
And all my dogs were from Germany and
Yeah.
elsewhere. They weren't American bred or
Yeah.
anything. But,
That's why all their commands are never in English.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks it's so the bad guy doesn't know what you're saying to him. No, it's because that's the way the dog was trained. He was brought up he's an ESL student, if you will.
The other thing I wanted to comment was your communications and an error of the communications and 911 stuff. My son was trapped under his SUV through a faulty jack and is out of train switch. And so the car fell on his leg and his wife called 911. She was told repeatedly there is no such address. And what happened is Taylor annexed part of that property and didn't bother to tell the
Update the 911
residents
system.
that were renting that their address had changed.
Street name and address.
So
Yeah.
she couldn't get help, and she actually, being inventive, was able to move it enough to get it off his leg, and about that time a policeman pulled down their driveway into the farm to see if they needed help. I mean, he could have died
Yeah.
He
easily.
heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, okay. Yes. And that's where that general broadcast part comes out.
But,
Yeah.
but this is such a mess.
Yes.
And that was a personal
When I was
experience.
there, I had talked the commissioners into giving us additional personnel because I understood that we didn't own those people. Or I say own them. They weren't our employees. But we sure as heck had oversight over them because it was our system, it was our data, it was our information, and it was our ability granted by the FBI. And I'm a graduate of the FBI National Academy as well, so I know the drill. And it was our ability to manipulate that data and keep it for ourselves. And so I said, well, then if we're not going to get it back, if that MOU is going to stay with the county between the sheriff and the director of communications, then I want people out there. And I had full staff 24/7 that went in there, and this is a true story. They would basically, their job was to sit in communications, and when they heard a call come in, they would start telling their people how to do it, because their big claim to fame was that they were not police officers, so they just sent us to every call. Every call that came in got dispatched. And we literally had a woman in Shenandoah over on 620 in the western portion of Williamson County. She called in that her 9-year-old would not eat his mashed potatoes. Called 911. And they dispatched a deputy. And we said, who in their right mind would waste that resource to go to that? She goes, we're not police officers, so we have to dispatch everything. And that's kind of a viable excuse, but it's not a good one, you know? And that's what we were dealing with. So now we have people on the floor there where they go, got a kid who won't eat his mashed potatoes. Hang up. You know? Tell him to call his dad home from work. You know?
And told him mom to take the garlic out of it.
Yeah, but those are true stories. And so we were going to a bunch of stuff we didn't need to go to. Yes, sir.
I have a political question.
Yes, sir.
Understand you're running as a Democrat
Yes, sir.
because Chody's the Republican.
Yes, sir.
But do you actually consider yourself a Democrat?
I'm probably the most conservative Democrat you're ever going to meet. And I also, I worked 24 years under every sheriff who was a Republican. They liked the way I conducted my business. They promoted me all the way to the rank of assistant chief. But, and I will throw the but out there, but the Republican Party has ruled for the last 30-something years, nobody has had to run for an election. They inherited it, won in the primary, and no one's ever had a choice. So I'm giving you a choice. Because if I would have run as a Republican, he would have buried me in the primary, and we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
How come you didn't run as like an independent?
To be honest with you, independents don't win in this county.
Democrat has a chance,
Yeah.
especially in this.
Yes, in this particular race, you're
One
right.
related question.
Sir.
Because you are running as a Democrat, does the Democrat Party expect anything out of you?
No, because I made it very, 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 very clear, and that's a nice segue since we're talking about communications. I made it very clear, and I'll make it clear right now, is when you call 911 and the 911 operator says, 911, where's your emergency and what's your party affiliation? That does not happen. There's no room for Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, or otherwise in the Sheriff's Department.
Well, I mean politically, not from a police standpoint.
Well, not to coin a phrase, but I don't work for them. And nobody's handing me fistfuls of money either, I assure you. So, and I've had a lot of them come up and tell me I'm not left enough for them, and they're not voting for me. So, oh well, they talk about the leftist, the way left Democrats, Well, trust me, I've only been doing this for 3 years now, but the Republicans got a few out there too, So I think purple's good. Purple is good. Honest people keep honest people honest, And it's the checks and balances, and that's what it was designed to do. And I won't be intimidated by anybody, and no one's gonna push me around. And it kind of does come back to what Bill was talking about. You know, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. And the only thing that should run the sheriff's department is what the law says, what's right and what's wrong, and the demands of the community as a whole. And other than that, it can all go elsewhere.
What do you mean the demands of the community as a whole? Is that social community?
No. I just mean, you know, if one person says we all should run around with our hair on fire, and 99% of the community says no, we shouldn't. You gotta do what the social norm says. Not inspired by special interest, not somebody who's trying to put money in your pocket.
So if 99 people running around with their hair on fire, that's okay?
If that's what the community wants, if that's the community standard.
That's not putting people in danger?
I just use it as an example.
Well, I know, but I'm just having a little trouble. I kind of
Yeah,
like the
really.
laws, you do what the law says. and-
Well, I think that it's the community standard. Like I was saying when we talked about earlier, you know, things down in Austin would never go over up here, you know, and that's the community standard up here.
And I don't think they should go over in Austin.
Well, yeah, I agree, but that's what a lot of people do. They leave that community standard because they don't like it either.
So
They-
let's
and they
not
go-
bring it here.
I mean, if they find it's distasteful to them, they will go find the community standard in which they fit in. Yes, ma'am.
Several things. I'm going to vote for you.
Thank you.
I need some of your signs.
Yes, ma'am.
And what else can we do to get you elected?
It's really an education piece. People need to do their homework and see who's the most qualified person for the job. What I have accomplished in the past, the discredit that I have not brought onto the department, compared to the discredit that's been brought onto the department in the last 3.5 years, and the total complete failure of everything. You know, the CIT program that's gone, the SRO program that got run off, all the in-custody deaths, all the SWAT team debacles that went on, all this live PD debacles that went on. You know, we're one giant bad reality TV show now. And I want to get back to being a sheriff's department that people can feel safe and calling 911 and having someone show up at their house. We had a lady during the filming of Live PD. I spoke to her husband, and he personally told me he was out of town, that she was afraid to call 911 during an in-progress burglary at her house because she was afraid Live PD would show up and destroy her house. And that's reality. That's the reality of what they were watching. And Live PD has basically shown that we live in a horrible place, and we don't live in a horrible place. We live in a very, very, very safe community. But a lot of people want you to think that this type of enforcement is needed out of fear-mongering, and it's not.
Well, one thing that you need to, well, not you, but the population needs to understand that everything Chucky has been bought.
Yes.
He has never been promoted in any job he's ever had in his life.
Correct. Correct.
So
And
where do we get signs?
I have them in my car,
Oh.
like any good politician would.
Pretty cool. I have some support the police signs in my car.
Cool. I totally support getting us back to where we were. And I don't mean going back into the old days, just where the people I talk to just don't feel safe. They don't have that relationship that they used to have. You know, they don't want the sheriff's department to come to their national night out. You know, they don't want the police at their house. Because I don't know if y'all saw the news story with that poor young lady who was the domestic violence victim, where the neighbors called in, and then the deputy shows up and grabs her by the throat, and then she's here on the ground being handcuffed. I don't know if you saw. She was the victim. She called for help, or her neighbors called for help because they heard her being beat up by her boyfriend. And the deputy shows up and he goes, "Well, I need to go inside and check your house." And she probably had a marijuana cigarette or something on the coffee table, you know, or something that she was not afraid of. She was, "No, he's gone. You don't need to come to my apartment." And he just goes to barrel past her, which is the wrong way of handling that. The police have the right to go in and do a cursory search, you know, for the offender. But she said no, and he comes around and grabs her by the throat, and she's half his size, and throws her on the ground and handcuffs her, and then after all that, he's in there belittling her as he's dusting her off and taking the handcuffs. That's a lawsuit. She's already got a lawyer. You know, I mean, that's just unnecessary money that's gonna be paid, and it's a black eye. It's a black eye for us. Could have completely be handled with, you know, de-escalation and just talking to somebody, and, you know, just, you're not in any big hurry. And he's obviously in some big hurry to get somewhere else, you know? So. Yes, sir.
So other than the corruption, that seems to be the biggest problem that we have in the county. But what is the crime that we have to watch out for? Is it still drugs? Is it human trafficking? What is the county?
Yeah, human trafficking is big, and I know it's something that it's not in our face every day, but I-35, man, that's
It's all out there, the drugs, the gangs, and the
everything is
trafficking.
there.
And that's another point too, when Ron and I went to the human traffic seminar or get together at the beginning of the year that Knudsen put together, there was nobody there from the sheriff's office.
Yeah, those, and that's a great segue. One of the biggest problems is we don't have any relationships with any more agencies. Our relationship with Round Rock, Georgetown, Cedar Park, Leander, DPS is out the window. The hatred between them is so bad because of what Robert's done to ruin those relationships. And I don't know if you guys remember 2 weeks ago now, where Cedar Park had 3 officers shot, and there was the person held up holding his family hostage in there.
Yes.
The first SWAT team that was on scene was Williamson County Sheriff's Office, and Mike Harmon, who's the chief of police, is a good friend of mine, sent him home. Sent him home.
Afraid it was going to escalate?
Yeah, afraid they would kill somebody. And he said, you guys go, we're waiting on Round Rock and DPS. And so they were backfilled by, their SWAT team was backfilled by, how embarrassing, because the news has them there on the scene, filming it live, and they're sent home. And congratulations to Chief Harmon, because during I ran our SWAT team for 10 years, and I've been, the standard is the NTOA, National Tactical Officers Association, and I've been to NTOA's SWAT Commander School twice, the TTPOA, which is the Texas Tactical Peace Officers. I've been to their commander school, and basically when it comes to what's called hostage rescue type events, which this was, the Supreme Court has said time and time again, negotiate, 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 and when negotiations fail, negotiate some more. That's the standard. Wilco just wants to show up, blow your windows out, and go in and, oh well, the bad guy's dead, we wounded another one, so hey, that's just the spoils of war, you know. And that's not, and they did it. They negotiated with that guy. They cycled those 3 SWAT teams out over 24-hour period of time, and they successfully talked the bad guy out, and no harm to any of the hostages. And that's the way it has to be done. That was textbook, and that's what they wanted to do. But he knew if Williamson County SWAT team would have been there, it'd been a completely different story.
That's where your leadership problem is, because
absolutely,
when Clinton was president, we had Mount Carmel.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they did. They just went in and killed.
Yeah. And you can tell.
That ATF.
ATF,
FBI.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. So.
The branch.
So yeah, we don't have any relationships, but the human trafficking with I-35, and another story, I did a story years ago on it, what a lot of people don't realize now, with the saying is drugs go north, money and guns go south. That's the standard, okay? I-35, when the drugs come out of Brownsville, Eagle Pass, or Matamoros, the first stop is San Antonio or Austin. That's the legitimate stop and get food, fuel, whatever. When you hit a kilo of cocaine or a pound of marijuana, the price is set at San Antonio. When it hits Austin, it goes up. When it hits Dallas, it goes up. When it hits Oklahoma, it goes up. And as it goes, 1,000 a kilo in San Antonio will be 10,000 a kilo by the time you get to New York City, okay? Because it's the risk, it's the cost of doing business. And so there's a traffic stop versus an interdiction stop are two completely different animals. And so one thing that you have to realize now is with the tollway, you leave the border, and as you're coming into San Antonio, you get on the tollway, which is a privately owned, non-patrolled, private highway, and you circumvent every interdiction unit until you're north of Georgetown. Your next worry is Dallas. So you get on there 85 miles an hour with a truckload of dope. So that tollway is where it's at. That's where it's all going now. So it's 35 and the tollway, because you miss all those interdiction units. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think our governor is doing enough to stop that?
He's got everybody on the border. Everybody goes to the border. Now, as a rookie DPS officer, unless they've changed it, I don't want to get in trouble for saying something wrong. But now, your first year as a trooper, when you come out of the academy, is a year on the border. So they can rotate those guys out. Because they were taking, you're there for 2 weeks, then you're there for 2 weeks, and then you're there for, and you might be from El Paso, Dalhart, Dallas, Houston. They're driving from their duty station to go do their time on the border. Well, then they would go down to the border, and they're so concerned about pandemic and other communicable diseases that these poor troopers would come home and have to self-quarantine. They wouldn't come home because they didn't want to bring some of them back to their families. So now they're just telling these guys, hey, you got to do a whole year there, and then you can pick your duty station. So the emphasis is still on the border, and that's because of the president. That's where the president's emphasis is.
Taylor's been hit a lot with auto theft.
Yes.
Right there.
The whole county has, because there are no deputies in the neighborhoods.
And I also heard that Hutto had been hit with trafficking.
A lot of the criminals from Travis County like to come up, do their business here, and go back south.
The 130 is, the Hutto police told us about 10 years ago or something, that when someone comes through your neighborhood and steals your stereo out of your car, the reason it's so prevalent there apparently is because they get right back on the 130 and they're home free.
Yeah, the number one hotspot for auto thefts is the Premium Outlet Mall around.
Yeah.
You go in there, because the big item is the big F-250, F-350 four-door pickup trucks.
Yeah.
They're 35, that thing's in San Antonio before you're done shopping. And then by the time you report to the police, it's across the border in a chop shop.
Fun driving that fast, huh?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, they call it the Texas Autobahn.
We all like it, right?
Yeah.
Except for that.
Well, the speed limit's 85, which actually means 95, because most Navy seats have a 9 over tolerance policy. So
They'll run you over at 80, right?
yeah.
This is my ignorance, but the constables, they are not a part of the sheriff's department?
No, sir.
What's the difference?
The constable's office the sheriff's office is countywide, and then the constables each belong to a precinct. Precinct 1, Precinct 2, and they are officers of the court for the JP. They do their civil process, their evictions, their warrant services, their writs and things like that. They do civil process.
Okay, so, but
they have power.
Work over in Taylor. I see these SUVs with constable. Do they carry guns?
Yes, they have the same powers of arrest as any peace officer. Same responsibility, powers of arrest.
But keep in mind, they're all still elected.
They're elected.
They're independent, just like the sheriff.
Okay.
Yes.
Speaking of which, as Bill's taught us over the years, the constitutional authority of a sheriff as an elected official, how do you feel about that?
It's good. It all, not even to make a joke about it, but there's a lot of groups, the Republic of Texas, those kinds of folks, that's the only authority they recognize. They don't recognize the right of a city or a municipality to have police officers. So it's good from that aspect because of its historical value, and it outlines, it's much more difficult to change a constitutional aspect of something than to change a city ordinance or a state law. So for the historical and the stabilization of it, it's much better.
See, the sheriff is so powerful that if you have a insurrection type behavior within the county, the sheriff has the authority to call the local militia and put it down, which means in the old cowboy days, you deputize a bunch of folks.
Yeah, your posse.
But bottom line is, he has the power, the ability, and the responsibility to protect the entire county and enforce the law and the Constitution.
And you're right, Bill, because I mentioned this at a couple meetings. Ghostway, I have a son that lives there, and they knew some buses were coming up, that the sheriff knew some buses were coming up there to try and tear down their statue. And the sheriff deputized the people, put it out. And there were over 300 deputized civilians waiting when that bus drove up. He had the fire department there, and he told them, if you get out of this bus, this is what you're gonna deal with. And so they just turned the hoses on the buses kind of moved sideways, nobody got out, and they left.
I'll tell you the story. When I very first started, when I forget the name of the computer. I want to say it was Apple, but then it was when they went to Macintosh and then Power Computing that moved into the old, not the old, but the Tico Westinghouse, when it was Power Computing back in 93, 94. They were entertaining, I want to say it was Apple Computing was entertaining coming here to do a factory as long before Dell got here, and they got their tax abatements and everything from the court at the time, and everything was set for them to come here. And then Apple had announced that they were now honoring benefits for employees who recognize significant others as their spouse, not their husband or wife, that they could be part of their benefits package. And the court said, no, given the date and time back in Williamson County, they go, that's not going to go over well here. And they said, well, too bad, we're on our way and we're going to protest. And the sheriff called in everybody off the streets, off duty, everybody, armed them all, and they surrounded the square in Georgetown, and those buses pulled up with, the ticket signs and everything, and the doors kind of opened up, and the sheriff goes, "Attention," and all the shotguns racked, and that door shut, and the buses drove away. and Apple Computing is not here. So he did it. He exercised that authority, but that was some 30 years ago.
There's a group called Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association, and Sheriff Mack is head of this, and he has classes and seminars that he teaches. When you're elected, would you be interested in bringing this kind of training into Georgetown?
Sure. I'm a Central Texas rep.
I still have a card.
I mean, this is some good training.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's got some really outstanding people working in their retirement days.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
The state passes laws and the city passes ordinances. What does the county have?
The county does not have the ability to pass ordinances. We can only pass, which is funny, you can go through the state process and get an ordinance passed. Williamson County only has 2 ordinances, and one is the leash law, and the other one, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, is when and where you can have a basketball goal in front of your house.
I'm going back to this mask thing, because the state mandate, right, of Abbott about masks.
Yes.
And then I've gone and seen the Georgetown website still imposes $1,000 fine.
Yeah.
When Abbott has rescinded that because the judges told him he was wrong, but Georgetown still left it up on their website.
Yeah, and you'll find that they probably, it's more of a scare tactic than anything else, because that's even when these states that file their state law that less than 2 ounces of marijuana, unless it's for medicinal purposes and all that, is perfectly legal. Texas has not done that. Texas will probably be one of the last holdouts, but Colorado, the other states, they say it's legal, so everybody goes to Colorado, but it is illegal under federal law. That's why they're not allowed to put their proceeds in an FDIC secured bank. That's why you're not allowed to do it on federal property. That's why you don't see any federal agents going, "Hey, I'm going to go get it stoned," because it's against the law. It's federal law. So I actually flew into Colorado for work, and I was standing at a shuttle to get a shuttle for my hotel, and this guy next to me is just stoned out of his gourd, and he lights up his cigarette, and I go, "Dude, you can put that out." And he goes, "No, man, it's Colorado. It's legal here." I go, "You're at an airport, and this is a federally guarded installation, and it's illegal. So put it out." And so it just kind of depends on where you're at. So when the state says something, state laws override city ordinances, federal laws override state laws, and that's that stair step. So it's probably more of a scare tactic or an ordinance, because you would go in there, if they tried to write you a ticket, you could go in there and say, "Well, the state law overrides that," and so it would be dismissed.
So if I go somewhere in Georgetown, in like the farmer's market,
Right.
and the guy calls the police, can I call you if you're the sheriff? Or,
Well, he has the same powers as well. He should not be enforcing a municipal ordinance when the state law overrides it. It's like
they might.
well,
You see
everything.
what's going on
Yes,
in the
yes, yes,
country?
and I agree with you because everything's a crapshoot because you're subject to who you get and how educated they are. You know, every time you call 911, you get a different personality with a different education, and there is no end-all, be-all, stop-all that says you will be treated this way. Because I have my poor next-door neighbor who knocks on my door nightly because she made a very, very bad decision and allowed her deadbeat boyfriend to move into her home that she owns in her name, and he won't leave. And these poor deputies that have no education because Robert just pulled them out of the academy, they're going, well, you have to evict him. When you live together, and I know that they probably have relationships, they're family under the law. So family violence law trumps any eviction rule out of a JP court, okay? And so I'm like going, tell him that he's abusive, that he hits you. They go, no. And so she lives in her car out in front of her house while he doesn't work and gets drunk every night. And she's waiting, and she finally, and I said, I don't know what to tell you. I'm demand to speak to a lieutenant or a commander, demand a supervisor, because you are being treated horribly wrong. And they don't know what to do. They refuse to help him. Either that or she's telling me a completely different story, you know, than they're telling her, so. Yes, ma'am.
I went to Walmart the other day, just a question here, and I had my mask on my finger, and before I went in the door, I was going to put it on because I hate them. And I asked the security guard there, I said, so when is this mess going to be over with? And he says, I don't know. He said, Walmart's is a privately owned company, so they can enforce it as long as they want.
And that's what I said earlier when we're talking about realizing, you know, your choice in matters does come with repercussions. Because, you know, if you don't want to wear it, don't wear it, but you're not going to be allowed in Walmart.
Yeah.
And I think there's gonna be some lawsuits.
Yes.
So if you wanna make some money, go to Walmart, wear a mask, and then file a suit.
I noticed, and kind of getting back to community standard, what I would argue if I was approached just now, or if I had to go to court, or if I had to go to jail to get my day in court, is I noticed when I walked in here today, and I walked into here, I had my mask on. Not because I love wearing it, because I hate wearing them too, but I walked in out of respect for, that was the rule of a private property, out of respect of everybody else in here, and what the social standard was. But I walked in here, saw that nobody had theirs on, so I took mine off. But how many employees have we had come in here, deliver food? Try and enforce that now.
We kind of set up our own little community here because we signed a document to hold the owner harmless.
Right.
Yeah, but
So as long as we're in the
But a police officer, depending on who you get, may come in here and say, that's a civil agreement between you two. The law says that you have to have a mask while you're in here. It's posted on that door, and that's what he's gonna try to enforce. And I'm gonna argue.
That's where we have an education problem because that's not a law.
Exactly. And that's where I'm gonna say, well, you had 3 employees that have been walking in here for the last 2 hours, you know, and they haven't said a word, so I assumed it was okay. So the liability's back on you, so.
So they told us here, initially we had to sign an agreement, and so finally they said we didn't have to do it anymore.
Right.
And then they said if you're in your groups,
Yes.
you can make your own decision.
Yeah.
So that's what this establishment
Yeah.
said.
But they've allowed you to set a standard, you know, what if one of the, because then and I'm just spitballing here now, but what if one of the waitresses walked in and went, nobody has a mask on, I'm not going in there.
That's okay.
Yeah, and that's her choice, and the owner's gonna go, well, I've got this agreement with them, go deliver that pizza or you're fired. It's a condition of employment, so we can go what ifs and lefts and rights all day long on this kind of stuff.
Well, we went to a thing up in Granger where Dan Patrick was there, and basically nobody of these 500 or so people in there wearing. We wore it when they went in and took our temperature,
Right.
they took it off. And, you know, the beer and food servers had them on.
Yeah.
I understand that. But basically, nobody else did.
Yeah, I own a transportation company, and we deliver special needs patients. And I went to Georgetown Behavioral to pick up a client and take them home. And I was walking in, and they do the whole testing and temperature and all that. And it was back during that stretch where we went 30-something days at 111 every day, you know. So I walk in across the asphalt, and she goes, 101? I went, give it a few seconds, you know, because I was baking walking across the parking lot. She goes, yeah, you're going down, come on in. It's like, you know.
Yeah.
But just a funny little story, Ron and I in the last 10 months have driven over 12,000 miles across 16 states, a third of the U.S. And guess what? There's no pandemic out there.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, the running joke is it's all over November 4th anyway. So.
Yeah, I think so.
But there'll be something else.
Yeah. What else?
Can you hang around and give us some so we can Sure. Anything else you want us to know?
Just that I'm obviously, you know, as you can tell by their conversations, I got a lot of been there, done that. I've lived through a lot of these experiences. I've held every position in the sheriff's department, even at a command level. We've never experienced these types of problems that we're experiencing now. And I feel almost somewhat obligated because, you know, so many of the people that I came up with lost their jobs, you know, and they can't get another job because their F5 is in, you know, that's basically your bar card if you're a cop, your F5. And they can't find them because Robert blackballs. You know, they're not going, oh, Williamson County, oh my God, you know. And I have a good friend of mine that she works for the state, and she's an instructor, and she goes around the state teaching other agencies, and she completely, when she's doing her bio, she says, I'm a retired cop from the Central Texas area. Oh, really? Where? No, that means she avoids it because as soon as they pry it out of her, everybody starts laughing, you know. And so we went from being, you know, probably the #1 agency in the state of Texas to the laughing stock, you know. The Texas Sheriff's Association refers to Sheriff Chody as Sheriff Chokey. They said because he has single-handedly managed to choke the lifeblood out of an agency in 3 years. Yeah. So.
That was kind of a
Yes, sir.
yeah, it's kind of a question I had because you said it right up front. If you get to be sheriff, you're going to bring back all these other people, replace the people Chody put in. I was kind of wondering, what if they're not available anymore?
True.
You know, I mean, how many of them do you think you'll really get back?
Well, a good chunk of them, and most of them are in the command level. And like Bill alluded to, it's a leadership issue. If the leadership is there, then you know you can direct people, especially cops, because we run a paramilitary style organization, and those types of individuals, which are usually super type A personalities, they crave that military lifestyle, and it's all in the vetting process. When I was coming up, the minimum standards for a police officer were 6 months to a year just in the background process. Half these people that Robert chose don't even have a personal history statement on file, which is illegal. The occupation code says you have to have your personal history statement on file, and that's that 25-page document that lists family, friends, every address, every school, your credit report, every vehicle you own, who's your insurance company. And we systematically go through your life, and everybody in here at some point in their life has put a reference down on a job application. For police officers, when they go, give us 5 references, I go, well, I'm gonna put Bill down as one of my references. I don't want to talk to Bill. I'm going to call Bill and go, who did you get in a fight with in high school? That's the dude I want to talk to. Because he's going to say nothing but glowing stuff about me, because that's what you're paying him to do. I put him on you. So that's how a good investigator goes and circumvents that. We do in-depth, and that does not happen now. And for those of you who own businesses, you know, after you put somebody in, about 7 years, they start showing their true colors. That's when the lawsuits start coming. That's when they started circumventing rules and regulation. That's where they start figuring out a way to shortcut people and things of that nature. And that's kind of where we're at. These guys were all dismissed from other agencies and have pasts, okay? And they can't get a job anywhere else. And Williamson County, even though it seems local to us because we live here, Williamson County is the 3rd largest law enforcement agency in Central Texas, okay? So we are big. On the national standard, we are considered a large agency. Most agencies are considered small and they have less than 25 sworn. That's 80% of law enforcement agencies in the United States. So when you've got 600 people in your employ and you're not doing backgrounds on any of them, and 5 or 6 cancers will ruin that whole organization. And when they're your supervisors and you lead by example and they see you getting away with that crap, that's why this thing turns so
Didn't
quick.
even make it to the 3-year mark at APD.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And his true colors were showing.
Oh, yeah.
And they would have put him in jail, but he, of course, paid them all off.
Won the lottery.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, you've probably heard here lately, the grumblings about a national register for police officers. When you get in trouble, if you get in substantial trouble, I don't know, you're late to work, but if you get terminated for lying, stealing, drug use, craziness, they want to put you in a national register, kind of like the sex offender register. You go into that thing and think, yeah, Mike Gleason was fired from Williamson County for X. That nobody will touch you. Nobody will touch you. But right now, because of litigation, they come up to him and go, well, Bill, you were caught, cheating on the entrance exam. And he goes, please, if you let me leave with a good F5, I won't sue you. And just resign and go away. And you go, hot dang, I get to say that $100,000 I'm going to save in the lawsuit, the mayor's going to give back to me in the form of a new patrol car. But if he has to pay $200,000 because I hired an idiot, he's going to take it out of my budget. That's just the way that works. And to coin Covey, there's only so much of the pie. And how do I give you more of the pie? I got to take away from somebody from the
Well,
pie.
that gets to another legal issue that's in state statutes. This Commissioner's Court not taking any action. They had the ability to
Remove their bond.
They have the power of the purse strings. They can actually eliminate all the deputies, institute a countywide police force, and then Chody just gets to play with the jail.
Right. They do. Sheriff Wilson always, because Sheriff Wilson was always very slow and methodical in everything he did. And we're super class A type personalities. Now, we're like going, why aren't you over there pounding your fist? And he would always refer to it as the golden rule. And he goes, I recognize the golden rule. And we go, what's the golden rule? He goes, the man with the gold makes the rules. And that's the court. He goes, if they don't fund my budget, we're all doing nothing. So it's a fine ballet between them. So, because they do have the authority. And I've seen the court do that. You need to go fire Mike Gleason. Why? He didn't do anything wrong. Well, we don't like him, so fire him. Well, no, they go, okay, we'll just unfund his position. Okay, I won't fire him, I'll move him. Okay, we just don't want to see him anymore. And I've seen them do that before as well.
Well, I want to thank you for coming here.
My pleasure,
I think we
thank
all
you.
learned a lot.